Hi guys, I want to talk about a rotator cuff surgery today. Some interesting things to think about with shoulder pain. I want to talk initially kind of about some of the anatomy in your shoulder and some of the treatments that will be helpful for you. So your shoulder has a group of four muscles called the rotator cuff muscles, and these are a really common problem to have all kinds of different pathologies with these muscles. Folks can have tears in them, they can have tendinitis, or just general inflammation in your shoulder. When you look at the statistics on rotator cuff tears, it's pretty interesting. It turns out that if you're older than 50 years old, you have at least a 10% chance of having a rotator cuff tear. And by the time you get into your 80s, there's upwards of a 40% chance of rotator cuff tearing in one muscle in particular called your supraspinatus. And another interesting thing to remember about rotator cuff tears is that the majority of tears are actually asymptomatic, meaning that you don't have pain with it. A recent randomized controlled study, which is one of the higher levels of evidence in medical literature, looked at rotator cuff tears in folks that were older than 60 years old and that had no traumatic incident that caused the tearing. And they looked at folks who had just physical therapy, folks who had one type of repair plus physical therapy, and folks who had a repair plus some work to a bone called your acromion. And it turns out that at both a 1 and a 2 year follow-up, there was no difference in pain or function with the folks who had physical therapy versus the folks who had surgery. So I think this is really interesting to think about if you're a person who has shoulder pain, even if you're a person who has documented evidence of a rotator cuff tear. I think this certainly points to the fact that physical therapy is a good treatment option, and that, you know, for most folks, rushing into surgery is certainly not what I would advise. So if you're interested in dealing with your shoulder pain or your rotator cuff tear, please check us out at Siskiyouphysicaltherapy.com.